some comments on overall crime, and then I'll turn it over to Chief of Detectives Brendan Denahan, Chief of Patrol, Chief McDermott, and then I'll come back for questions. By the way, I also have an announcement of a new program expansion that we're going to start, have already started. So let's start with the vaccine mandate update. 87% of Chicago Police Department members are in the portal. Just a reminder, the portal is a program that's software-based. You enter your information whether you're vaccinated or not, or being tested twice a week if you're not vaccinated. So 87% of the Chicago Police Department members are in the portal. Of the members in the portal, of that 87%, 76% are vaccinated. 76% are vaccinated. And 85 members of the Chicago Police Department are in no pay status in violation of the vaccine mandate. Next, I'd like to announce our citywide expansion of our narcotics arrest diversion program, which is another example of Mayor Lori Lightfoot's data-driven, common-sense, whole-of-government, multi-pronged approach to crime fighting and community building. The program basically is, in lieu of arrest, offenders are diverted to drug treatment. It would not have been possible, this expansion or the program, without the efforts of Deputy Chief Antoinette Ursetti and the Crisis Intervention Unit of Chicago Police Department, along with Department of Public Health, Thresholds, which is a nonprofit drug treatment, the University of Chicago Crime Lab, and the Chicago High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. The Crime Lab role is to evaluate the program, and preliminary findings are encouraging, to say the least. Participants have a 44% lower likelihood of rearrest. 80% of those diverted into treatment remain engaged in treatment. We're reaching 3 goals all at once. 1, reducing the time officers spend on processing low-level drug offenses. 2, connecting individuals with substance use disorders to treatment. And 3, improving public safety. And it has been clear for a very long time that society is not going to be able to arrest or jail its way out of this predicament of drug addiction. We know the old playbook is out of date. 3 strikes and you're out, and mass incarceration were failed programs. Our diversion program and its expansion not only helps individuals make a better life for themselves, but it also allows CPD, Chicago police officers, to focus our resources on public safety. Next, I'd just like to recount some notable events over the past several days. Year to date, we've made 1,292 carjacking-related arrests, 1,635 total vehicle hijacking incidents, so a total of 1,635 carjacking incidents year to date. Of those 1,292 arrests, 288 were for vehicular hijacking, 362 were for possession of a stolen car, and 642 were for criminal trespass to a vehicle, basically being in a stolen car. A notable arrest recently, the Vehicular Hijacking Task Force arrested an 11-year-old on November 26 for felony aggravated vehicular hijacking. Let me say that again, because that shocks the conscience. Our task force arrested an 11-year-old for carjacking on November 26th. He was identified as the offender who carjacked a 48-year-old woman on November 14th in the 4700 block of North Cumberland. Unfortunately, this is a sad state of affairs. Unfortunately, this 11-year-old has been arrested before, and he is considered a prolific carjacker in our city. previous recent arrest was the 11-year-old was charged with being in a stolen car 2 weeks earlier from the arrest on the 26th that was taken in a carjacking in nearby Evergreen Park. 11-year-old carjacking people. Next, let's update on a notable narcotics arrest. Before we do that, though, just want to recount year-to-date narcotics totals. Our unit has recovered 6,322 kilos of drugs with a street value worth $419 million. Year-to-date, they've also seized $25 million in U.S. currency. We have closed, our narcotics division and gang units have closed 49 criminal conspiracy cases, taking down both gang and narcotics crews this year. The notable incident from our narcotics and gang unit is Cleavon Riley, 39 years old, on November 24th, was arrested for Class X felony manufacturing, delivering heroin, and a Class X felony manufacturing, delivering cocaine. The gang investigations team took Riley into custody, and he was in possession of 433 grams of heroin with an estimated street value of $64,000 and 14 grams of crack cocaine with an estimated street value of $1,700. Our gang unit arrested Oscar Cervantes, Cervantes. He is a member of the Latin King gang and a convicted felon who was on parole at the time of arrest. He was arrested for unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. Officers conducted an investigative stop after witnessing Mr. Cervantes violate a traffic law. He was in possession of a loaded Springfield XDS 9mm loaded handgun. He was charged, and the Illinois Department of Correction was notified, and a parole warrant was issued for Mr. Cervantes. There was a notable arrest for burglary over this past weekend. As you know, and Chief McDermott will give you an update, we've seen across the country burglaries, break-ins, smash and grabs. We have particularly focused on this type of crime here in Chicago, both prevention and enforcement. Over the weekend, we arrested two 16-year-old juvenile female offenders. On November 28th, they were identified, these two offenders were identified earlier, taking multiple items from the Ulta store at in the 3000 block of North Clark. They were placed in custody and charged. The 19-year-old was charged with 1 count of felony theft, and the 16-year-old was charged with 1 count of felony theft. The 16-year-old was also charged with 1 count of felony burglary. Basically, they stole $8,500 worth of items from the Ulta, that's ULTA store, 3000 block of North Clark. Now we'll turn, finally, let me just do one more thing and then we'll turn it over to Chief Dinahan for an investigative update. We've recovered so far this year 11,182 guns that were illegally possessed and made 5,260 arrests for possession of illegal guns. Just for the weekend, 79 guns were recovered and 42 arrests were made by the brave and courageous men and women of the Chicago Police Department at great risk to their own personal safety. And now we'll turn it over to Chief Dinahan. After that, it'll be Chief McDermott, and then I'll come back up for questions. Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon. The superintendent already covered the beauty supply store that suffered the burglary incident. As you mentioned, 3 offenders were charged. It was an excellent job coordinating with all the officers and the gang units who actually made that stop when we were able to apprehend those individuals. And as the sup mentioned, they were charged with both felony theft and with burglary. We also had a few other incidents from some stores that was connected to a black Jeep, and the detectives are still investigating those incidents. We were able to recover the black Jeep, and we're going forward with those specific crimes. Once again, we ask the public for anybody's help and assistance in identifying these offenders. People out there know who's committing these crimes, and if we could get that information to the police department, to the detectives, we could solve these crimes. Lastly, I want to give a brief update on a couple of murders that occurred out south, where we had a 14-year-old that was killed, and then several days later, his mother was the victim of a homicide, basically in the same location. So detectives are working those cases right now. We currently don't have any eyewitnesses. We obviously believe, and at this point, we think we can prove that the same group of offenders are responsible for both incidents. But due to the fact there are no eyewitnesses, we are once again asking for the public's help. You can remain anonymous and send the information to cpdtip.com. The detectives definitely need some input from the public on who these offenders are. I spoke to the detective division earlier today, and they stated they had received some anonymous calls. So we just ask that those continue so the detectives can take these violent offenders off the street. At this time, I'll turn it over to Chief McDermott.
And before Chief McDermott comes up, I just want to reiterate, anonymous tips can receive a reward of up to $15,000 if their information leads to charges and conviction. And that's not just for this homicide, for any homicide. Thanks. Brian.
Morning, everybody. The department's resources remain on standby as the department continues to monitor smash and grab incidents citywide. The department remains ready to implement its asset and infrastructure protection plan at any time. We remain proactive in our presence on L train stops and platforms, where we reinforce the public transportation section with resources from our citywide community safety teams and with headquarters personnel. The department added 2 mobile LPR and pod trucks and 2 mobile LPR and pod trailers to the central business district. This equipment helps us identify stolen cars and vehicles typically used in these type of crimes. With the department maintaining its one-day canceled posture, we were able to deploy additional resources to the central business district, including detective division personnel, headquarters personnel, and training and support group personnel. This additional personnel allowed us to staff fixed posts in the central business district and to conduct high visibility roving patrols in the downtown area. The department will continue to coordinate all of our resources to ensure safety, not only in the downtown area, but in every neighborhood across the city. At this time, I'd just like to personally thank all of our members who continue to do what's asked of them on a daily basis. Thank you.
We'll take any questions. Yes. Boy, right? Young boy. Yeah. Randy, you want to take this?
So we'll get out some better details, but basically from the detective's investigation, the 11-year-old seems to be driving these carjackings. So he's not just there, I guess, your question, like along for the ride with some other individuals. So he is a participant, but I'll get you more details on exactly, because there's several that we're investigating at this time that he may be linked to, but he's definitely I guess I would call it a strong participant in all of the events. I'm just going to give several for right now because the investigation is open and ongoing.
Yes. Yes. No, that's not an option. Oh, yes. I haven't heard those reports. I am familiar, we are familiar with stolen U-Hauls being used in break-ins and other crimes, et cetera. And so we're always alerted when we have cases of not only stolen rental cars, trucks, and U-Hauls being a red flag for us to follow up on those stolen items. I need to follow up with you offline about that particular one. Do you know if your information is related to in the city of Chicago, or is this somewhere? We'll find out. Thanks. Any other questions? Yes. I'm going to reserve comment on that particular case. I think it's received more than its fair share of news coverage, given the circumstances, and we're going to focus on the business of protecting the people of Chicago. You got a question?
Yeah.
No. So they can, good question, thank you. So they can give their information about a homicide anonymously and receive the reward anonymously. They don't have to testify as long as the information they give us leads to charges and or conviction. They receive the full reward anonymously, and they stay anonymous. Any last questions? Right.
Now we are.
I'll reserve comment, and just, again, I think it's received its fair share of coverage. That doesn't mean I may not comment later on, but right now I'm reserving comment. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.